Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Chris, who is Product Evangelist for BoldPenguin. Chris, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Yeah, no, very good, very good. And I was being all sycophantic off air, so I can't hide away from it. But you've been on our wish list of podcast guests, so I'm really, really pleased we found the time. So thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
As is tradition on the Leadership in Insurance podcast, we always throw it open to our guests to introduce themselves and the business that they represent, because we're always frightened of making a mess of it. So it'd be wonderful if you could intro yourself and the BoldPenguin business.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Cheatham. As you can probably see with my hat, I'm based out of Kansas City here in the middle of the United States. I'm the product evangelist at BoldPenguin. So BoldPenguin does basically quote and bind for small business insurance. We work with agents and carriers that are looking to sell insurance to small businesses here in the United States. We have a number of products that help people do that. Here as the product evangelist, I basically just go out and talk to people, try to help where I can. Sometimes that involves helping people understand what BoldPenguin does and maybe how the product can help them. Oftentimes it does not have anything to do with actually, promoting BoldPenguin. It's like helping startups figure out what they're going to do or helping people understand the overall commercial market segment. And a lot of times it's just jumping on podcasts and webinars and things like this as well, and just seeing what's going on.
Spreading the good word. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. I've got to get to this, and I shamelessly spent a lot of time crafting a message I sent to you once, which was being really nerdy about Star Wars because I'm a massive Star Wars nerd. So I want to know where it came from. Where did this Luke Skywalker of Insurance Policies come from? And is it self-titled or did someone bring it up for you?
Yeah, so there's a kind of a longer backstory to this. So back when I was just starting RiskGenius, that's around kind of 2015 or sometime around there, I was also working on LinkedIn and trying to hone my message there and trying to raise money from VCs and all of that stuff. And I was a little bit frustrated, I remember, with the kind of fundraising process, like everyone is whenever they do it, because it's really hard. And just happened to be updating my kind of LinkedIn profile and was listening to what I call my angry rap music, this is like going even before the Luke Skywalker thing. So I was listening to Dr. Dre, who's a famous rap artist here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I just on a whim, I put in my LinkedIn profile, Dr. Dre of Insurance. Just made no sense, but I was like, it amused me. So I put it in there. And it was really weird because I started going to conferences and it started sticking and people would be like, "What's up, Dre?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking." And I was like, "Oh, is this?" And then I like kind of started enjoying it. And at one point, this kind of online publication called Startland News wrote about me being the Dr. Dre of insurance, and that kind of stuck. So I did that for a while. And then like, as we started kind of becoming, I guess, a little bit more corporate, bigger, more eyeballs, I decided to make it a little more PC. Dr. Dre doesn't have the softest lyrics if you listen to his rap music. Yeah. Although I'm letting my kids listen to it now, which is like, I like it, but I don't like it. I'm not sure if I should be doing that, but who knows? So I changed it. I think the new Star Wars had come out sometime around this time period. So I threw up the Luke Skywalker of Insurance. There was also a period of time, because Luke Skywalker is not up there anymore. There was also then a period of time when I had up Big Head of Insurance, which is a reference to the TV show Silicon Valley. And Big Head, who's like this funny character who sells his company and finds himself in ridiculous situations. And so I thought that was kind of funny, but decided with the team here that I should probably take that down. So now it's just like making insurtech things happen, which is like the most bland PC thing to possibly have up there, but it is where I'm at in life. So here we are.
That's that. I love a lot of that, and it makes me a little bit sad towards the end. It's like, that's the corporatization of an acquisition. That's what happened. That's the journey, all reflected in LinkedIn profile names.
Absolutely. I actually think it's a great story now that I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's now got me thinking that, I've got that freedom. This is my company. We are a recruitment business. We're always kind of about being on LinkedIn and being kind of noticeable. So trying to think what film character. I'm instantly thinking I need to be Morpheus because I can give you the pill to wake up and some rude awakenings about your recruitment strategy.
That's actually really good. When I saw you on screen last night, I went to a concert, Bon Iver, which is a musical band in the United States.
Yeah.
And the lead singer is like kind of bald, and he came on stage. You'd have to add a headband, but he had a headband, he was bald, and he had earphones on like you, and a beard. And I was like, oh, it's exactly like the guy I saw playing music last night here in Kansas City. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll take that. Cool. That's a cool band as well. So I'll take frontman of maybe that. We'll try and make it happen from here. This was the starting point of that. But joking aside, it's really interesting that your journey, and I did want to go back to kind of RiskGenius and understand that business, because what I wanted to understand was, we are entering into a space. Well, I mean, you may or may not agree, but it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this. It is a bit more difficult for earlier stage businesses in the insurtech space at the moment, seemingly, to raise capital. We're seeing that. Do you think we're going to see a spate of M&A activity from some of the larger insurtechs? Is that something that you think might happen in the next kind of 12 to 18 months?
I don't know if it's going to be the larger insurtechs acquiring companies. I think it actually might be some of the more traditional companies out there, like maybe carriers or agencies that start acquiring insurtechs, because like the insurtechs need right now, they don't generally, and this is all generally speaking, right? But generally speaking, like insurtechs that particularly that have not exited or gone IPO or sold to someone, they are dealing with lower valuations. They're dealing with harder capital to raise. So they're not looking to spend a bunch of money right now, right? If you go look at Y Combinator is a startup accelerator. There's a guy named David Sachs on Twitter, and they're all giving the same advice, which is like reduce your burn rate, which is how much you're spending. So as a result, I anticipate insurtechs won't be doing tons of acquisitions that are not exited already. There's other examples like BoldPenguin, for example. We've acquired Insurion this year. Right. And we've already exited. So now we have capital to do such things because we have a larger parent company. So that's a great example of what I just described. Insurtechs on their own, probably not. Insurtechs that are part of something bigger, absolutely. They'll be doing acquisitions because there's going to be, frankly, good deals out there.
Yeah, sure. And we've certainly seen the lean towards that as well. I mean, I've endlessly been talking on various podcasts about the evolution of the insurtech businesses, and I think BoldPenguin's a really interesting example. RiskGenius prior to that as well is that insurtech's working with the industry, not fighting against it, not telling it it's obsolete, not telling it's broken, but actually saying that there's this role that we can play in making the industry more efficient and more profitable. And actually, before I jump back to RiskGenius, because I want to talk about that journey, because a lot of the people listening in are entrepreneurs or involved in smaller insurtechs, and it's interesting to talk to people that have gone through that journey. Talk to me about the problem that BoldPenguin solves specifically, and how does the business model work? Because I understand the part you play, but not necessarily the business model.
Yeah. So to think about it very simply, before BoldPenguin and similar companies in our space, like a agent or broker that has a small business looking for insurance, that agent or broker would have to choose which carriers they want to go get a quote from. They would then log in, and let's say carrier A, they log in and they enter the information in for that small business. And then they get a quote. And then they go to carrier B and they enter the information in and get a quote. And then carrier C, enter information and get a quote. And maybe a carrier D, maybe a carrier, I lost track of the alphabet there. So 1 to 5 carriers maybe, right? Usually they have their favorites, but that's really inefficient to enter the information in that many times. And the carrier portals in the past have been really hard to use and not real time, and you wait weeks to get a quote back, et cetera, right? So BoldPenguin, what we do is we allow an agent or a broker to enter information about that business once into a smart application. And after you've entered your information in, then you get multiple quotes back from multiple carriers, depending on which type of panel you've selected, which carrier panel you've selected. And then from there, you can pick the carrier you want to use and then bridge over to that carrier's website and bind the quote. So it just takes the process down from something that was like hours to literally minutes. Our successful agencies that I talked to are like, yeah, it's like a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute thing to get this all done. And so it makes people really successful. The other part to the BoldPenguin platform is like when agents want access to small businesses, we will connect them to small businesses looking for insurance as well. So that's our BoldPenguin exchange. The first product I mentioned to get the quotes is our BoldPenguin terminal. And there's different iterations. I can tell you about our Storefront Pro, which is basically now agents are kind of rolling up their own website essentially so that they can say to small business, hey, I could enter your information in, but if you're that type of customer that wants to enter their own information in and start exploring quotes on their own, just do it on our website right here. And then you give them a link. So yeah, it makes the process way, way more efficient, and it's continuing to get better and better. Kind of when I look out on the horizon, I think about how can we start including automated data so that if you type in your business name, it automatically classifies your business, which is a big sticking point in this whole process. And then how do we pre-fill the entire application for you? We're still working on that.
Yeah, we had the guys from Relativity 6 on the podcast, you know, looking at that, you know, that specific problem in itself. It's a good story actually, because it was just sort of the accidental iteration of the business to get to that. But yeah, it's something that I'm aware is a particular problem. So RiskGenius, where you guys were acquired in 2020, how long had the business been running, the RiskGenius business independently?
Yeah, so the business really started back in 2011. And it was initially like I was a surety bond attorney, which is like basically like a financial guarantee on behalf of, I think of it as a construction thing, but it does lots of stuff. So a construction guarantee. So when I initially launched the company, it was called Claim Kit, and we were doing claim document and data management for large claims. And that kind of evolved is a nice way to say pivot, which is a nice way to say didn't have product market fit. So we had to go find something else to do. That evolved into RiskGenius in 2015. And it was actually a customer of ours at ClaimKit that said, hey, we like your document management software. Could we use this to review insurance policies? And so I said, sure. And I might be able to do you one better. What if we applied artificial intelligence to those policies to help you find the contents really fast? And so that's what RiskGenius became in the end. Yeah, it's like a insurance policy library that's super smart. Simple way to think about it.
And so where did the what I sort of am interested in, and I don't know how much you can share, what was that journey like from being, you know, CEO, entrepreneur, you've done the hard stuff in pivoting, finding a product market fit, acquisition? Was that always the goal to exit in that way? How did that come about, really, I suppose? Did they approach you? Were you shopping it around, or?
Trying to think back to that time. I mean, I think an acquisition isn't typically the route that people imagine from day one. Typically you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to go IPO this, or I'm going to sell this, you know, just do a sale to some large conglomerate. So an acquisition was slightly different, but it made a ton of sense at the time because BoldPenguin was launching an insurance intelligence division, which is basically like data scientists, data analytics type stuff. And so by acquiring us, they were able to supercharge those efforts with a new product and our people that understood insurance and data science. You know, this was also all happening during 2020 is when this went down. So you can imagine, like, it was a crazy year. Trying to understand what carriers were doing with budgets and projects was just a nightmare. And so it was a great landing spot for us, and we were all able to kind of work together and make it happen.
It was very specific in the. I was looking at the press announcement about it in part of my research, just to prove we do some. But it was very specific about mentioning team, and obviously you mentioned team now, and that was, you know, one of the purposes of the acquisition itself. But there's always a sort of challenge when you make those sorts of transactions. You sometimes lose people. did that happen to you? And then I kind of wanted to sort of understand, how did you manage that internal communication to the team to say, right, this is what we're going to do, this is the decision we're making?
Yeah, I think as on the scale of like not telling anyone and being transparent, like we were somewhere like being fully transparent, knowing every single detail, which I don't recommend. And I don't recommend doing it quietly either. I'm not very good at that kind of stuff. I think we were somewhere in between. So we kept our team apprised of what was going on. There were definitely questions and concerns along the way, and there were definitely different opinions about, what we should do. I think one of the hard things for any startup that like builds a culture of, hey, we're going to do something amazing and take on the world and go crush it, is then when you get to the exit point, no matter what that exit is, there's going to be people that want to keep going, right? Because they're like, no, we got more we can do. We can go do blah, blah, blah. And so you're just going to run the gamut of people and how they accept it. But like, yeah, people moved over. That was one of the things that like you kind of have to, on an acquisition, you kind of have to take a leap of faith a little bit that the people are going to get treated properly. And everyone moved over to the BoldPenguin team. And throughout the acquisition, I was evaluating it from like 3 perspectives. Like, is this good for our investors? Is this good for me? And is this good for our people? Actually, people and then me. And like I added me at the end, frankly, because like I was not doing a great job of evaluating it from my own selfish perspective. I was like trying to make sure this is the right thing for our business and this is the right thing for investors to make money. And so at the end, I was like, okay, I got to make sure I make some money on this too, selfishly, right?
Yeah.
And so, so we had to, I just wanted to always, evaluate it from that perspective. And I think we did a good job.
Good. Yeah, that's what I was sort of conscious of, is like how transparent to be or not transparent to be. And I suppose you've also got to really be careful, because sometimes these things don't happen, and you need to keep it under the hood until that happens. So it's always kind of challenging. How did you adapt to the cultural shift? Because you're joining a much larger organization. And actually, I suppose specifically joining at that period of time, did you join when it was a fully remote situation as well?
That's a great question. Like, there's so many stages. It feels like there were multiple shifts in culture in a very short time period. And what I mean by that is, like, first of all, you go, we're at RiskGenius and we're in an office, and we had this like big open office, really small for the number of people, but that was on purpose, sort of. And so we were all used to sitting around and working on ideas and having fun. And then COVID hits, right? So we're all at home working, which that presented a lot of challenges. Some managers wanted people in the office, some did not. So that was always a little tricky. And then you go and get acquired by BoldPenguin in a remote environment. And so then you have to figure out, okay, I'm being acquired. I'm part of this new company, and I'm in their new work environment, which is remote, which they're sorting out at this moment. So I have to sort out a new work environment that's new to this other company. What does this all mean, right? And then you layer on the top that BoldPenguin was then acquired by another company, American Family Insurance, in February 2021. And then you're like, okay, I just got acquired by a tech company, which got acquired by an insurance company, and we're remote. What the heck is going on? So I do think that like our team did an amazing job, like being flexible, because that's a lot of stuff to take on all at once.
Yeah. I mean, that's the time I'm a headhunter, and that's the time I get those phone calls, because people are unsettled, and people adapt to change, and changes in culture, changes in kind of ownership in very different ways, and sometimes people just resist against it regardless. There's no way that you can manage them through it. They're just going to have to find that out.
Actually, can I ask you a quick question? I have a question about that as well. Like, so workforce and how they're being deployed is like always something I'm interested in, right? And we had all right, let's go remote. And then we had let's go remote. And oh my gosh, the labor market is very much employee friendly right now, right? And it feels like that's starting to swing back towards more corporate friendly, like they get to dictate the terms a little bit more, but then you're starting to see corporate trying to dictate, going back to the office, and there's a lot of pushback on that, and those plans are kind of falling apart. So what's going on right now? I'm very curious. Like, what are you seeing? Like, what do you see coming here in the next 6 months or so?
Yeah, there was a bit of a theme, I think, and it's very different on the different geographies. So I operate across the US and the UK, but I'm predominantly focused on the US. And I think largely people have sort of stuck with remote, but gone back to flexible and are encouraging rather than mandating going back to offices, because I think that there's an acceptance that you do lose something not being in an office. Definitely there's a decent proportion of the particularly large corporates, mainly because they've got such an investment in real estate, I would imagine, trying to get people back into the office and drive that. But that is driving people away. And I think the companies that have pushed really hard on that are finding themselves in a situation where they're having to pivot again and actually change tactic and say, okay, we're going to do this blended operation. And that's what people speak to me on the candidate side and say that they want. You know, that's what people want. They want to be treated as an individual. I've seen the benefits of being able to work from home, spend time with their children, you know, do a load of washing whilst you should be working, you know, like, because you can put it on manager. And I think, yeah, the horse has bolted on that one. I think the acceptance is there. Going forward is a really interesting question, because I was talking about this yesterday on a separate podcast, on the 11FS podcast, and we were talking about what we do badly when we talk about hiring people and hiring strategy is that which is ironic, because, you know, a lot of what you do, particularly when we talk about product, we go, right, who is our customer? What does that customer want? And the real secret sauce is imagining what that customer wants in 2 years time, 3 years time, 4 years, 5 years time. If we look at the talent we need to bring into the insurance industry broadly, and insurtech industry, we're talking about not the people necessarily in it now, but who are the people that we need to bring in. So that might be new skill sets, you know, algorithmic trading people, for example, that might be coming in, or it might be just people that are too young to currently be in the workforce that are going to join the workforce. If we start planning their customer journey and what they're looking for, it's very, very different, because I think there's still an acceptance of people that are our age, that worked in offices, that we kind of understand that and we kind of see a little bit of benefit. I think it's very difficult to kind of plan a future where you say to someone joining the workforce in 5 years' time, saying you need to come to this one location every day, and if you can't physically make it there, then you're not going to be joined. I think we're going to see more bespoke, but no one's quite solved the problem of how do we onboard people, particularly at the early stage of their career, if we don't have them in the office, because there's so much of that is learned by individuals. So it's an interesting question, and I don't know that anyone's got the answer to it, but certainly very sporadic. I'm dealing with startups that are building businesses in one location and they won't hire anyone that isn't in that location, and I'm finding that that's very unusual for me. But yeah, so I've taken a long time to answer that question, because I don't think there is the one answer, and certainly no one's got it right. But the blended model seems to be what people are leaning towards.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, how are you guys operating now? What's been the response from BoldPenguin setup these days?
We're remote, right? So I'm based in Kansas City, and we have people all over. I think with a focus on growing particularly our Ohio employee base, because that's where the company is founded and built. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been interesting to kind of watch the evolution of the remote workforce. You know, like we do these things called waddles, which is like a check-in on the company. Somebody gives a presentation on something, and you know, I think the workforce, what they want remotely has changed. So remember when we first started COVID Zooms, and you would do like I remember still a trivia night on a Friday night on Zoom and I thought it was the most fun thing in the world. And by week 3, I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I want less than to be on another Zoom after being on Zoom all week at work. Get me out of here. I want to go outside and like lay in the grass and stare at the clouds, because I haven't been outside for weeks on end, it feels like. So those waddles, they've gone, you know, we've had to adjust how those kind of get presented, what's presented, how many a week to present, you know, just so that you stay you keep the engagement going with the employees in the right way. So definitely remote though. And I think we're at this point figured it out pretty well.
I think one of the challenges is around the flexibility issue, is timing. And I have this problem myself, is that people are working flexibly. They're working their own sort of hours, and they're definitely. I really like the mantra that it's about output rather than kind of hours. And that's been a huge problem in the UK. The UK works longer hours than most of Europe, and it's less, but we produce less per hour. So there's definitely this kind of culture of being at work. But the problem is how to mandate the response to. You might be working a 9 to 5, but then your manager's decided to have that more flexible output and start work later that day and then work later, but then you're getting messages about things that you're supposed to be responding to. So I do think there's something to be done around controlling the kind of level of response expected from people if you're going to start operating a flexible culture. I wonder what your thoughts on how you manage that. Is that an issue that you've ever come across at BoldPenguin?
It's a great question, because like I used to work in a law firm, right? I was a lawyer, and like kind of had a rule: respond to any partner or customer or client within an hour, like always on, checking your phone. And it's a little bit different at a tech company because you don't have a filing deadline for a legal case that just popped up that you have to go meet, right? It's more like building the right product, building the right marketing strategy. None of that stuff will, if you don't have it done at a certain time or date, none of that stuff will cause the company to shut down, right? There's no like bear barreling through the door that you have to go fight, right? There's no like, now there are certain people that have emergencies that they have to go knock out, like if the web goes down, or you have a security thing you got to go patch really quickly. Things like that pop up for sure. Customer needs service, absolutely, respond really quick. So it just depends. I think the other thing that has complicated this is like Slack, right? Like Slack is a weird tool because it like promotes always on. It's like, it's more even like they talk about email has a dopamine hit, that every time you check it, you get a dopamine hit and feel good, unless your inbox is empty and then you feel bad that you don't have any friends or colleagues emailing you. And like Slack can make that 10 times worse because it depends on how it's been adopted, but like it creates this like, for whatever reason, like I need to respond instantaneously. And so I've actually tried to force myself to like shut it down for periods of time and do work instead of like be on Slack and be on email. Because otherwise you can be literally checking messages and threads all day, every day.
Yeah, the proliferation of like just different communication channels has been a problem. I started out in the recruitment industry 15 years ago, and you could only get someone at their desk, and now obviously you've got mobiles, and then it became very normal for you to give out your personal mobile because it was easier, and it's a little bit closer to the legal environment where you kind of almost, when you're on an assignment, you're always on until you get it completed. But now if I look at, I've loads of WhatsApp groups with clients, I've got WhatsApp group with candidates. A lot of clients want to bring me onto their Slack channel, and Slack is actually the one thing that I've pushed back on and said, I don't want that, because it's another thing that I literally have to shut down all comms otherwise.
To plug another Slack channel is like Insurance Nerds has a Slack channel that would be probably really beneficial for you, because there's like it's like one of the things they do is try to help people, because there's a lot of jobs being lost in insurtech right now. So they've created a jobs board that they share out with all the different positions that are out there in insurtech. So it just depends, but like there's ways to use all that stuff. I think you just have to be very careful.
Yeah, I've just started putting my phone on flight mode at a time when I'm done for the day, right? And because I mean, the world's not going to end if someone doesn't come back. It's that thing of, you feel that you have to respond immediately, but it's very few jobs that you actually have to do that on. So sometimes we have to kind of put some context around, and the pandemic should have done one thing, which is give context around what's important and what isn't. And I do worry that we're slipping back to that, particularly, I'm based in the UK, in London. I'm already in the situation where people are demanding I come and visit them in their office in London, and I live 50 miles outside of London, at least once a week. And I'm thinking, well, we didn't do that for the last 2 years. I don't think we need to do that now, but we'll see. Talking about the acquisition of BoldPenguin by American Family in 2021, did you get any pushback from commercial carriers that are your partners on the platform? Because
no, not really. I mean, I actually still remember calling one of my contacts and telling him about it, and he's like, That's great. That makes sense. I mean, when you think of American Family, right? They're like initially like a home life type or home car insurance type thing, right? And so obviously they're trying to understand and build out a commercial strategy, and BoldPenguin's part of that. But as far as, it'd be a lot different, I think, if it was like a big name commercial insurance carrier
Sure.
that had a significant portion of the marketplace. Then that would cause all sorts of issues. But we were able to avoid that, I think, because of just how we structured it.
Yeah, sure. No, it makes sense. They've been pretty active, actually, haven't they, in the insurtech space? Whether it be some investments or, they've been pretty keen, particularly in the kind of, that investment, even just as a sort of LPs of funds. It seems like they've got a bit more significant play than some have. Have you been surprised at how late to the party some other sort of traditional insurance carriers, brokers have been in terms of investing heavily into this space?
Not really, because I don't know. I think of it as like insurance is kind of a service oriented company, right? It's like law firms again that I mentioned in the past. And so that's a certain type of business model with a certain type of margin that they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can get the benefit of the tech without trying to buy a company, right? You can be a carrier on the BoldPenguin platform. You don't have to own a platform to do that. So you can get wide distribution without actually having to go invest heavily in the technology, which I think is just kind of a good play. If anything, I think that, I think I'll just leave it at that. I was about to stumble over some words. I was going to comment on insurtech and all of that, but I'm going to stay out of that morass and that whole
let me drag you into it. I think something that we've seen is where do you connect with a business, like a carrier, brokers? That's the thing that seems to have changed over time, is that there's much more top-down support. So I think you're absolutely correct. I think insurance carriers, brokers of the traditional world don't have to invest. They can just kind of partner with, work with, use platforms. But the sort of evolution of like innovation teams, for example, we're seeing those kinds of, some of those teams drive a bit of a lead, but basically this is never going to take off. We're seeing a lot more top-down support, is kind of what I'm taking a long time to say, for these kind of tech initiatives. Is that something you've kind of witnessed from because you've been in the insurtech space a very, very long time, really?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of like the innovation teams, I think most of the time their job is to kind of learn about what's out there and then inform up and explain that to them. It's not necessarily to go find the solution that solves problem A and embed that solution to solve problem A. I think the people that have to go do that kind of stuff are the actual stakeholder, right? So if somebody really needs to fix insurance policy wording, that's the person that should be doing the implementation, because they can figure out what they like and they don't like and make the right decision and the right solution. Whereas an innovation person in an insurance company, certainly a smart person, but like they don't understand necessarily the ins and outs of policy wordings and how to modify those and edit those and search those. And so they can find the solutions that possibly do insurance policy wording analysis, but it's better probably to present those solutions to the stakeholder and let that stakeholder run with the solution that they want. That's what I've seen from successful implementations, particularly of RiskGenius, which is now called ClauseLink at BoldPenguin.
Yeah. I was reminiscing with someone that we figured out that we used to work at RSA, the carrier, at the same time, when we were talking about some of the ill-fated technology implementations, and it was largely because of exactly that. There was a complete absence of the end user, the stakeholders. I joined in. I worked in claims for a period of time, and the big investment in this claims new platform, and it subsequently span out that no one from the claims team had ever seen it or worked on it until it was rolled out, and surprise, it didn't work very well. Culturally, how have you found your customers in adapting to utilizing the technology? Because it's one thing to say, yes, we think this is a good idea, we're going to put BoldPenguin on these things, and I appreciate this is not necessarily you seeing it. It's probably more feedback and talking to customers and partners. Is there any sort of pushback or theme, even when it's such an obviously good idea? Do you think there's a cultural issue there sometimes in insurance for adoption?
So I know I just always think of like a bell curve, right? You're just going to always have early adopters that really, really get excited about it and want to give you feedback and fix it.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have kind of middle adopters, the middle of the bell curve, and they're going to be okay with it, but you only get a few tries with them. And then eventually, if they don't see value, they're out. And then you're going to have your late adopters, and they are not coming on board until it's like completely baked. 80% of the world's using it already, and they have to use it, right? Yeah. And there's no point in trying to like get them on because they're just not interested. It's like your agency down the street that still does everything in paper. That's just they're not going to be doing digital stuff anytime soon. They may be just kind of running off the clock for that family business, and they're ready to let it go. The opposite side of that would be, there was an agency we just talked to actually in Oklahoma on a webinar called Landis Blosh. And I just remember Austin Landis, and he was, he's a younger guy, I think in his 30s. And he was talking about how his firm started as an oil and gas insurance agency in the 1900s, like 1900. Wow. They've been around for 100 years, which would be, I guess, 1920s. And he was, so like, you can imagine all the hard parts of shifting the culture to start doing digital work, but they figured it out. And it just, you have to have strong leadership that wants to do it, I think, is the key. And then the rest of the employees will sort of just figure it out and make it work. Whereas if you're kind of like tiptoeing around, it just probably won't work.
That's such a great answer to bring in the bell-shaped curve, because I think I can be quite guilty myself of talking on this podcast a bit dismissively, and then doing so with my guests about that kind of culture of adoption. But then I'm talking to people that are pushing the boundaries of what's happening in insurance and insurtech. So by nature, it's kind of all of the early adoption people. It's all the kind of the innovator people. So, it's gonna seem alien, but I think those cultural shifts. And what surprises me is exactly those sorts of things. Hearing stories of, I deal with a specialist MGA that I've been doing some work for, and outside looking in, it's a really traditional agricultural business driven MGA. But they're just really invested in tech from a cultural standpoint. They're like, everything they look at is like, right, how can we do it better? What can we bring on board that's going to make us better at it? But you wouldn't think that necessarily. So it's really interesting. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason sometimes as to why the culture of one business is more early adoption than another. But obviously it's led by those decision makers. Do you think independent agents is obviously, core, customer base? Have they been well served by technology? Because I was going to ask you about how they've struggled to move quickly with insurance technology, but then I've definitely had a few conversations about saying they haven't been particularly well served with technology.
I think most of the tech out there that came out of insurtech was not built for agents. Especially like the companies that made, took huge investments like a Lemonade or a Policy Genius. But I do think the independent, especially in the US, the independent agents won round one, right? If it's insurtech versus agents won round one, and there's like no doubt about it. And what I mean by that is like just go look at the insurtechs and their IPOs over the past year. They had these huge multiples when they exited, and now a lot of those stocks are not doing well because people don't think they're going to realize the value that they're anticipating. And so, like, as a result, I think agents have kind of proven out, we're still needed. There still needs to be a person that talks to the business that wants insurance, or the person that wants insurance. I can't tell you how many digital agencies I've talked to that have said, we tried the, straight through processing. Actually, Landis Blosh is another great example, because I asked Austin this question. I was like, you have a storefront now, a BoldPenguin storefront for your agency. So somebody can go on there and go all the way from quote to bind and be done with it without an agent. What's your experience? And he's like, we don't do that. And we don't have companies that want to do that. They still want to talk to someone even after they get their quotes, so they can get their questions answered and understand what they're buying. And so we're just really, really far, in my opinion, from a point where, and I'm talking primarily for commercial insurance because that's where I focus, right? Sure. But like, we're really far from anywhere that you can go and feel comfortable buying, on your own as a small business, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I think some of that's down to kind of the third party data. Even as something as simplistic as we're saying, like actually clarifying what that business does from, if we can get to the point where I can put in FinPro Search Partners Limited and it can tell me that what I do, because one of the examples I always use when I'm buying my insurance, 3-person business, it's limited in terms of kind of what I need coverage wise, but the question that always stuck with me was this system going, well, how much professional indemnity cover do you want?
Yep.
And I don't know what the average claim size is, so what, I don't know. How do I, you tell me. But then I get on the phone to Markel, big up Markel, been with Markel for a while, and the guys at Markel can tell me, they can say, oh, you don't need very much in the UK, but if you do some work in the US, you might need a bit more. So it's a value added, and obviously that's me buying direct, but brokers are the same thing, and they serve that purpose. And it's more about giving more tools, because I definitely think with not a comfort level yet as well for a lot of small businesses to be comfortable doing that straight through processing. So even if it's there, I think your example there would be, I would fit it within that. And I'm an early adopter and I understand insurance, but I still probably want to buy my insurance for a broker, just to get that, that advice. What's conscious of time and looking to never overstay our welcome, wanted to find out what's on the slate for you from a product perspective, obviously, that you can talk about for the next 12 months. What specifically are you kind of working on? Is it evolution of products, or is there more kind of 0 to 1 stuff that might come out from the BoldPenguin business?
Yeah, so there's two things, and one is the Storefront Pro that I mentioned that just came out. So starting to let people see that and understand that it's like your own branded website where a business can go in, enter their information in, and then get a quote back on the other side, and even go to bind if they really want to do that. So we're seeing a lot of uptick in the use of the Storefront Pro, so that's exciting. And then the second one, and this is going to be a journey to get there, is excess and surplus ENS, right? Because like a lot of the, when you are a small business, let's say you go through and you get a declination from all the admitted carriers that are on our panel, well, then what, right? And that's where the ENS market comes into play. And so there's a few carriers now starting to go digital on the ENS side. Like PathPoint was the first ENS carrier that we've partnered with to bring on the BoldPenguin platform. So I'm really interested in how fast that process can get sped up, so that, to me, it should be eventually seamless, where, you get declined on all your admitteds. All right, let's give you some quotes on the ENS side. So I'd say that journey on the ENS quoting is like where we were at BoldPenguin probably back in 2016, right? We're like 5 years behind, not behind. It's just like, it just started up because it's like the next step that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, those are the two things I'm thinking a lot about. The third thing that I think is going to be interesting is like, and this is kind of like a macro trend that I'm tracking, is like, as insurtechs are cutting spend because it's harder to raise money, I think there's a huge opportunity for the agencies out there to acquire digital leads and prospects in a more cost-effective manner, because you don't have insurtechs gobbling up all these leads via spend or Google ads or whatever it is. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for the agents to really fortify themselves against what is surely going to be an insurtech wave 2 that's coming, where people are going to take what they've learned from wave 1 and try to apply it to wave 2. And I think in wave 2, what I'm seeing is like micro digital agencies, right? Like targeting wedding planners or targeting, I don't know, garbage disposal companies or whatever that is, right? I'm just making up some examples. Because the APIs are built out, they've been connected to the distribution platforms like BoldPenguin. The next evolution then is those microsites like the Storefront Pro that I mentioned, that can be spun up for individual use cases, and targeting those use cases with content and really trying to drill in and get people focused in the right way. So that's kind of the 3 big things I'm looking at.
Yeah, because it goes themically, that last one particularly, I think, into the sort of, when you talk about embedded and what people mean by embedded insurance, and the technology is there, the connectivity is there, the tools are there for you to say, you don't have to have the audience already to sort of develop a kind of embedded type solution, but you can go, I think there's an opportunity here, and really your expertise is only in marketing and building an audience, and then you can plug in that insurance offering to it, and that be your thing. And I think we're going to see more of a rise in that. Someone came to me with what they thought was an idea, and they thought, I think it's going to be an MGA, and they were going, we've got to build out our technology. And we were at ITI in New York, and I went, well, why? There was like 4 or 5 businesses there that I thought that these guys have got the technology you need. They've got some of them have even got capacity you can have off the shelf. But if not, you could connect it to a sort of a BoldPenguin type business to get sort of quotes on it and get it bound automatically. So, I think you're right. We're going to see this new wave of people coming in that just take advantage of all those tools, put them together in a way that becomes much more competitive than it was.
Yep.
Why do you think E&S is sort of that much more behind? Is it just because it's more complex, or is it just complexity that's kept it there?
It's really complex. And as I understand it, it's like, I don't fully understand the complexity, to be totally honest. But as I think about, one of the key differences is like they're trying to really micro classify these businesses, right? One of the big things in the BoldPenguin platform is how we do a really great job with, and can get better, but doing a great job with, business classification. So you type in that you're blah, 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 and it says, okay, it looks like you are a florist, right? And that's correct. Whereas in E&S, florist, there's lots of variations of florist, and they need to know those things, like how many, what's the flower called that eats Venus flytrap, right? Maybe there's a really big liability around Venus flytraps. I don't know. I'm just making up something. Or like poison ivy. Maybe you harvest poison ivy as a florist. And like they may need to know those things because that changes the liability. And there's a reason why that risk was declined by somebody else. And so as I think about it, they had to dig in deeper to figure out what the risk is. And so automating that's a lot harder.
Yeah, no, understood. Yeah, if you're running the Little Shop of Horrors flower shop, then you've got to be more careful.
It always amazes me, like that I can always come up with weird use cases on the fly. Just like the old one I used to use was like UFO insurance, like if you get abducted, which I found out was a real thing. Actually, you can buy insurance for being abducted by a UFO down in Arizona.
How does one claim for that? That's what
I have absolutely no idea.
Wonderful. I love that. I love that. Well, that's the sort of thing that the Luke Skywalker of Insurance Policies should know. I'm going to campaign for you to bring it back, or go all the way back to Dr. Dre of Insurance. I think that's much more fun. But Chris, thank you so much. I've really been looking forward to this. I'm really sort of a big fan of what the BoldPenguin business is doing. It's been a really interesting journey to watch, and it's been great to have you on and have that particular insight on the product side. So thank you so much for taking the time out to be a guest.
Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. All the best. Thank you.
Cool. Bye.